Hey guys, what is up? It's SkullFlag44 here. Welcome to Hawk Ramblings, the Seahawks 53-man roster and practice squad edition. So I'm going to be kind of explaining the Seahawks 53-man roster and practice squad and the cuts they made and kind of talking about all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and so that's kind of what I'm doing here. It's not necessarily like informative, like, all right, here's what it is, just kind of listing it off to you because you can just find it. You just go to the Seahawks website and find the roster there. It has, most up-to-date information and everything because it's straight from the Seahawks. But talk about some of the decisions they made, how that could impact the season, and my thoughts on it. So one quick note before I go into this is that I actually made a Seahawks 53-man roster prediction, sort of deal. But I didn't make a whole Hawk Ramblings on it because I was like, is that really worth a whole video? Then I would combine it with another video, and then it's like, do you really want to hear? I don't know, it just didn't make sense. So I was like, okay, here's an opportunity for me to expand into my blog, which is w44.tumblr.com. Pretty easy to get, same as my Twitter page if you want to follow that for more. I tweet a lot about Seahawks, majority sports and stuff like that if you are enjoying this sort of stuff. Just w44.tumblr.com, and then you can see my prediction and see kind of how it compares. Wasn't very good, to be honest. It's not even like if I had it really good, I'd probably go over it. But there are a lot of surprises here, and all of them make sense, I think. But it was. Took a shot at it, and it didn't really work. Although no one got it right or anything, or really close to it right, so can't feel too bad about it. So starting off, I'm just be talking about the cuts they made, and then I'll go into as I work through them, I'll talk about some stuff, and then I'll work into the roster, and then I'll work into the practice squad because that's kind of the order that it went into. So the first cut we have here is fullback Michael Robinson. So this came out Friday night. This was happening. Something that's been talked about for a while, at least on Twitter and by people have kind of thought about. Some people were very adamant, like, oh, no way they cut him. Especially after having so much success rushing the ball. It'd be a huge surprise if they were to cut him, not worth it. But then he had this weird, illness, and then it was like, well, he hasn't really been around. Makes it easier for him to be let go if he's not around, sort of thing. He's getting paid the most, the highest paid fullback in the league. Is that really worth it? If you cut him, he has no guaranteed money, so you're not losing any money, no dead money there. So they just decided to do that. I guess they felt stronger in their younger guys and wanted to clear some room for some of the other fullback, running back sort of players. Next, we have Brady Quinn. Oh, by the way, I didn't predict that one, but I don't know. As far as I think it's not an awful decision. I understand them making it. Next, we have the quarterback of Brady Quinn, who got cut and got picked up by the Jets, I think, right now. Although there's a lot of quarterbacks kind of in transition, getting signed, then cut, signed and cut, and all sorts of stuff like that. This is one really easy to figure out, probably one of the easiest, cuts there is. A lot of the other guys might be able to sneak on somehow. But this one pretty simple, because the Seahawks weren't going to carry three quarterbacks, and Tavares Jackson clearly won the job. This one is defensive tackle Silver Salinga. I really should have learned how to say it, but I don't really need to since he got cut. But we'll get back to that later because he's not gone forever. He's a guy that the Seahawks traded John Moffitt for him, or really got rid of John Moffitt, and they got him in return. And I thought he played decently. Like, I predicted him to make the team. It was between him and Mike Morgan. I was trying to figure out who to make it. And Mike Morgan, ended up making it, but he didn't. But it was one of those kind of toss-up decisions. I don't know. I guess they didn't feel too strongly about him. They really trying to figure out the defensive tackle. They're really not sure what they have there. Next, we have Michael Brooks, who's an undrafted guy out of East Carolina, who I don't know, flashed a bit, but wasn't good enough to make the team. Nothing too surprising there. And then Dwayne Sherrington, same sort of situation, I think, out of Mississippi State. Nothing too surprising. Surprising. I don't know why I don't know. I've never even said the word like that. That makes no sense. Next, we have Clinton McDonald, who's a veteran guy. I don't know. Some people had him making the team. I never thought he was going to make the team. I just didn't see a spot for him. Didn't really seem worth it for me. And then Jay Howard was one of the big surprises. He's a fourth-round guy from last year. And I really thought he was going to make the team. I thought he was going to, actually play a lot and be a good contributor. Everyone's like, all right, Dan Quinn coached him at Florida, was successful there. It's going to work out here. And especially with them needing more defensive line depth with all their injuries and, Irvin suspension and all that sort of stuff. You'd expect him to make it, but I guess they were not happy with him and just decided to cut him. So I don't know. That was kind of a disappointment to me, but I trust the Seahawks in making the right decision. I think he went to like the Chiefs, or I think the Chiefs. A lot of players went to the Chiefs or the Jaguars. Next we have Phil Bates. Nothing surprising there. He wasn't going to make it. And then Chris Harper. Not super surprising, but a little surprise to me, just because it's always surprising when you cut a 4th-round player. I don't know. He got signed to the Seahawks practice squad, I believe, and then got signed off the Seahawks practice squad from the 49ers. So that was kind of interesting chain of events. I don't know how that kind of played out. I don't know why they couldn't, it just seems like there was like communication error or something. I don't know why the 49ers didn't want to sign him right after he was cut, because they signed him to his 53-man roster. I was worried he was going to go to like the practice squad for 49ers or something, but he got signed straight onto the roster, which is kind of surprising. So hopefully he's not too successful there, because that would be kind of a pain, because he definitely has the talent. Like, people thought he could go in the 2nd or 3rd round, that type of talent, but just did not pan out at all. Although down the road I could definitely see him being successful. So that one was just kind of interesting, because he was cut and then no one claimed him, so I guess he wasn't worth his 4th round salary or whatever, and then he's pretty much just getting paid as much as an undrafted guy would, the rookie minimum. Next we have Brian Walters. Nothing too surprising there. He's a guy from the Seattle area, but got injuries and there wasn't really a spot for him. And then Arcito Clark, undrafted guy, was decent, but not nowhere. It wasn't like a tough decision to cut him at all. Really easy. Sean McGrath was pretty surprising. He was the guy that was supposed to be the 3rd man, the 3rd tight end, or even the 2nd, because Luke Wilson. But for some reason they weren't a fan of him. I really started to like him because last year he got on the team later in the season, and I wasn't a huge fan. I just didn't really see him. But then he grew this beard, and it was like changed his number up. And I'm the type of guy that I grade and get my thoughts on players a lot by just kind of how they look and how athletic they are and all that sort of stuff. And usually I'm pretty right. I don't know. It's one of those weird things I just kind of have a sense for. The numbers and how well they're actually playing impact a lot, and that impacts how I view them. But it's just the little things I'll pick up on. He didn't really seem like a real player last year, but then he this year he looked pretty solid. But they were not happy with him, I guess, and decided to just go with 2 tight ends for now, and we'll see if they decide to go with that throughout the season, or they pick up another one. Then Cooper Helfett was like the 4th tight end, so not surprising he was cut. Darren Fells was the 5th tight end, so it wasn't surprising he was cut. Winston Guy was pretty surprising, because he was the guy always making that joke. Freaking done with him now, I guess, for bringing that stupid thing up. He was a contributor last season, 6th-round pick, seemed pretty solid, but kind of had some weird, like, I don't know, was kind of had some on the field trouble, I should say. Like, I guess he had like some PED issue last year, and then he just was kind of a pain this year, just in practice and stuff like that. And so I don't know, kind of a tough cut, but they were gonna have to make a decision, and he was the one to go. And then Deshaun Shedd, cornerback, safety, kind of hybrid guy. Thought they might keep him, but they didn't. Same sort of thing with Winston Guy. Rashad Johnson. Some people thought they could keep him. I don't know, more of a developmental guy, I think, and they've got some pretty good offensive linemen, especially with them keeping Michael Bowie, because his shoulder injury isn't too bad. Then that's not a big deal. Ryan Seymour, a guy I think picked in the 7th round, kind of another one of those offensive linemen. I think their strategy on offensive linemen is you just kind of pick a lot of them, and then some turn out. And it looks like Michael Bowie and Alvin Bailey are the ones that worked out this time. Ron Parker, no way he was going to make the team. He's been kind of jumping back and forth with the Seahawks, and He was on the Panthers for a while. Has talent, but didn't really work out. And then Ty Powell looked to be a pretty solid player. People thought he would probably be Benson Mayowa, which I think I might have said before, as in the guy that could come in and make a statement, but didn't work out. But not all those guys are gone, as I will get to in the practice squad section. And the Seahawks roster, there could be a couple moves before their first game here, but it should be pretty set, at least for now. That's why I kind of waited till everything worked out. So let's see. So I'm gonna just work through the Seahawks roster, even talking about all the guys that we're definitely gonna make the team, and kind of my thoughts on them. Just kind of give a full recap of this 53 man. So we'll get into that. So first off, I'm gonna start out with the wide receivers, and then I just kind of sorted it by I sorted by position. I don't know how it works itself on the Seahawks website, but we have Doug Baldwin. Solid player for sure. Out of Stanford, undrafted guy. I know a guy that really was really solid his first year as the undrafted guy. Led the team in receptions, then kind of fell off last year, but still showed some talent. And this could be him getting back. I don't know. All the Seahawks wide receivers are guys that really solid pieces. I don't think any one of them will have breakout years, but they could all contribute to a really solid wide receiving core. And next, Jermaine Kearse, gotten really solid this season. Or this, off season, got that LASIK eye surgery. Is looking like he could be really versatile with his, kickoff return skills, which I don't know, kind of came out of nowhere since he's never done that before, but it looked really decent doing that. Just another really a guy that you want on your team, and is not gonna disappoint there. Next, we have Sidney Rice, who's been on the team for a while. Big contract sort of dude. This could be his last year here because of his contract, and he's only 27, but he has 7 years of experience, so he's becoming more of an older veteran in the grand scheme of things, especially on the Seahawks roster. And so I don't know, but should be pretty productive as long as he can stay healthy. And he's got that knee. He got some sort of knee procedure done that should help out. Golden Tate looked really solid last year. I'm saying solid a lot. That's pretty much, if I had to describe the Seahawks wide receiving core, it'd be solid because there's no big play, or not necessarily big play guys, but no big name guys that are really gonna do anything crazy before Percy Harvin gets back. But just a lot of guys, they don't really have any holes, I would say, because they have all the different wide receivers fill a different piece. And then Steven Williams, it'll be really exciting to watch him play. Hopefully he's all healthy and good to go by the time that the season starts up and everything like that, because he had that concussion kind of issue. And so that'll be fun to watch him play, because he's a big, not going to get too many catches, I think, but is a big yardage sort of guy. So that'll be fun to watch for sure. I'm just kind of looking at the weights of all these guys, and it's funny because there's the height and weights. Doug Baldwin 5'10", Golden Tate 5'10", Steven Williams 6'5", and then Steven Williams weighs 208, and then Jermaine Kearse weighs 209 at 6'1". I know, it's kind of interesting, the body types and all that. I don't know. I guess Jermaine Kearse is the heaviest out of all the wide receivers, which makes sense. I kind of would have thought Sidney Rice might have him beat. Who knows? The weight and height numbers are kind of smudged in the way that the teams want them to, the ways that look best for the players on the team. All right, next we have the tight ends. Only 2 tight ends. We have Zach Miller, really, really good player. He's not like an exceptional player, but gets the job done and is a solid tight end. And then Luke Wilson, who will be a lot of fun to watch because he is a fast guy, but 6'5", 252. Rookie didn't get a huge opportunity at Rice because there was another tight end there. I don't remember who that was better, but I don't know, kind of that hybrid wide receiver tight end like Anthony McCoy or Delaney Walker or something like that. One quick note on Chris Harper, who's on the 49ers now. Apparently the 49ers are going to start using him as like a tight end sort of player, which could be really interesting, and that could be super successful for him. So that'll be something to look out for if that works out for him. I don't know. That seems like, taking a chance on him and using up a 53-man roster spot is kind of a big deal, though. Seems more like a practice squad decision, but we'll see how it works out for him. Then we get into the tackles. We have Alvin Bailey, undrafted guy, kind of came out of nowhere, but probably was in the early part of camp he was really good. And then Michael Bowie, a guy drafted in the 7th round, had some off the field issues, but that seems to be cleared up now. Big thing, he had that shoulder injury, and so in the Raiders game, so people were thinking, oh, is he going to go to IR? Or is he going to be able to make the team? And I guess it wasn't too bad, so he'll make the team. He might be, it might be a couple week thing, which will show how much they like him on the team. Because I'm guessing one of these guys is going to end up being inactive anyway, so they figure it's worth keeping you on the team for this early part if it only takes a couple games to get him back. Or maybe he'll be good to go. Who knows how that's all going to work out. Breno Giacomini, I don't know, one of those guys that isn't great but isn't awful, sort of just an average player, and I'm looking for Michael Bowie or Alvin Bailey to take over for him eventually because they're just bigger upside. Russell Okung, Pro Bowl player, really, really solid first round draft pick. Gotta love that. Mike Person. I always want to say Pearson because it seems like I know how to say person, but it's like, is your last name really Person? Like, it seems like there should be something more to that, like some sort of French Pearson or something like that. But apparently it's Person as far as the commentators can tell. Really versatile. There was talks. Hawk Blogger thinks that the Seahawks might start using Person as like the third tight end for blocking stuff. So that would be really interesting if they do decide to go with 2 tight ends. Because they did mess around with that in the last game, having him as like the 6th offensive lineman, which would be really, I think, really fun to watch, just that experimentation. And then, maybe as like a goal line option, if you put him there, and then all of a sudden you have, maybe he's so every once in a while they'll have like the big offensive lineman catch a touchdown, other teams. So then if you throw him the ball a little bit, maybe he has some sort of decent hands and, not going to be running routes, but a guy that could just kind of slip out and provide an option there. Because goal line situations should get a lot better if they do decide to use that, because then you have, Person on one side and then Zach Miller on the other with your 5 offensive linemen. And, Person's a better blocker than Zach Miller, I'd imagine. Zach Miller is almost as good as you can get as it's for a tight end. So that creates a pretty solid line that should help out for the running game, which will be fun to watch. So I like that idea, but I think if they find a good tight end there, then they might keep it up, because 2 tight ends is just kind of a weird thing. You don't really see that too much. If they were to do 4 tight ends would be feasible, but then you've seen for a while it was all 3 quarterbacks, and now it's 2 quarterbacks is the big thing. And then I think the Raiders have like 4 quarterbacks, although they might have just cut one. I don't know. The Raiders always do things crazy, don't they? Now we get into strong safeties. We have Cam Chancellor, Pro Bowl player, just got signed. Love watching him. Just almost like a linebacker, but fast in the backfield there. Hard hitter, just like a really, just a really big piece of the team that I think kind of holds everything together for their defense. And then Jerron Johnson as the backup, undrafted guy out of Boise State. Nothing too special, but does a good enough job as a backup and has enough upside that he'll never, I don't think he'll ever grow into a starting player, but into a really solid backup for sure. Now we get into the running backs, which looks like it's actually kind of interesting. This is something I'm just seeing right now. They have Derek Coleman listed as a running back, and then looks like they have Spencer Ware listed as the fullback. So I don't know if that means too much, but it's been thought that Derek Coleman would be the fullback and then Spencer Ware would be the running back, because Derek Coleman, this is his 2nd year out of UCLA. He is like legally deaf, so it's like an awesome story that he was able to make this roster. But as far as I can tell, I mean, he just seems like a replacement level fullback. Can do more things than Michael Robinson in the catching game, and is actually can move as a running back, if he plays fullback. But Michael Robinson, I think, was a better blocker, which you'd expect, better leader and all that. So it's really interesting they would have him as a running back, because I don't know if he's worthy of being on the team as a running back. and then they would have Spencer Ware as a fullback, because I could have those switch and understand it. So we'll see how that works out. If they can get Spencer Ware to be their fullback, I think that'd be really, really good, because he is a really solid runner. And if you have that versatility of a guy that can, block, and then, you give him the ball and he can, juke some guys, that's pretty special, as well as being able to have a big hit. So we'll see how that works out. And then Marshawn Lynch, of course, great player. Awesome to watch him. I was watching some highlights last night of the preseason. He had one play where he hit the, he was on a run. It was the Green Bay game. It was a nice screen pass, and then he hit the player at like the 28.5, and then he took the player and ran through him until the 4 or 34. So that's like a 5.5 yard gain just off him running someone over. And it wasn't like he made a little move on and he kind of just stretched out along. He just ran right into this person, ran him over, which is what Marshawn Lynch is best at, is when he gets up to speed. He's best in the mid game, when you give him a hole and then he'll break through and he'll get like these chunks of like 10 yards at a time. That's his specialty right there. Then Christian Michael. Really excited to watch him play, the highest drafted pick on the Seahawks this year. Second rounder, really talented. He's the guy that, is going to be able to, if there's no, I like to say, if there's no yards there, he might be able to get a couple. And then if there is a nice hole there, he might be able to take it all the way, so offers that nice versatility. And then we have Robert Turbin, second year player, 4th round draft pick last year. Solid backup player. I don't know if he'll turn out into much besides that, but a solid running back on their team. No real thoughts to cut him or anything like that. So now we'll move on to the 2 quarterbacks. So for quarterbacks, we have the backup in Tavares Jackson, 30 years old, 8 years of experience, Alabama State. They tried him a couple years ago as the starter. Didn't really work out, but he was decent, not the franchise guy that maybe they were expecting him to be. Or I don't know if they really expect him to be that, because that's kind of ridiculous. But, didn't work out ideally, but he was, still solid. He had that torn pec muscle he had to deal with. But now they've got him back as the backup to Russell Wilson, which is really a perfect situation. It doesn't get too much better than that. Tavares Jackson is one of the better backups in the NFL, and especially, the players seem to love him. He can't really do the same things that Russell Wilson can, but he can, do similarly. And I think if Russell Wilson were to go down, knock on wood, God forbid that were to happen, because that would be awful, he could fill in and, at least be serviceable. He's not going to win a game for you, but he's probably not going to lose with either. So that's really nice having a backup like that. And then, of course, Russell Wilson being the beast that he is, it's going to be really fun to watch him play again, because he's just, so poised back there, so strong, makes some crazy plays, and, wouldn't really rather have, or, there's not a quarterback I'd rather have than Russell Wilson. Next, we got the punter, John Ryan. I think he was the MVP of the 2010 season, or 2011 maybe, one of the seasons a couple years ago, and that's, not really, official or anything, but that's kind of what everyone agreed on, because he was great and the Seahawks were bad, so, punting was a big part of it, I guess. I don't know, great punter, love what he does, happy for him. I'm excited to watch him, not excited to watch him punt, but I know if they do need a punt, then he'll do a good job. Clinton Gresham recently re-signed and kind of got extended to the Seahawks, 2-year deal, I think pretty cheap, $800,000 a year. They kind of restructured his deal after Kyle Nelson couldn't make the team because he wasn't good enough. Because ideally they would have had him be the long snapper, because he's cheaper and long snapping isn't a huge job, but it is a necessity. But he's been great as long snapping, good special teams player. If you don't notice long snapper, then that's a good thing and doing a good job. Next, move into the linebackers. A lot of linebackers listed here, because they have the defensive end position as kind of a linebacker mix sort of deal. Starting off, we have Alan Bradford. Really enjoyed watching him play during the preseason. I think he's a really good player and could take over the starting position for Malcolm Smith. Only 24 years old, 3 years of experience, or 25 now, actually, just turned 25. Really, really, really solid player. I really like what he does, and good special teams, huge hitter. Wouldn't be surprised if he's playing a significant role down the road. Next, we have Heath Farwell, probably the biggest disappointment and surprise on the roster for me. I just really didn't see a job for him because he's getting paid like 1.5 million, only a special team sort of guy, and I thought the Seahawks were so talented, just all around, that the special teams wouldn't be an issue. They're gonna have one of the best special teams in the NFL, just off of all the athletes they have. I didn't think Heath Farwell was necessary. Whoa. Necessary. Yes, necessary. That was weird. I totally blanked out on that word. I was kind of confusing necessity with necessary, I guess. I don't know. That was something. I just didn't think he was important. He's like 31 years old. Not really going to be a contributor in the linebacker position. I guess he could fill in if need be, but you don't really want him there. He's not going to get any better. And so I just didn't think he had a really spot on the team. I thought there was, a lot of other players that could take his spot. And, maybe we'll see that when, Bruce Irvin comes back, they're going to have to take out one of these, you could assume one of these linebackers, defensive linemen, and he could be the one that goes because, he's not a huge deal, and especially seeing how some of the other linebackers, play out. Next, we have John Lotulelei. I like what he does. Big, undrafted guy out of UNLV. He was one of those weird undrafted guys where it's like undrafted, but you almost assumed he'd make the team, like more so than some of the seventh rounders. I don't know, the seventh round and the undrafted guys, just like these weird mix because I don't know, like sometimes teams will like their undrafted guys more than their seventh round guys, but they have to draft the seventh round guys because other teams like the seventh round guys more. I don't know. It's just a weird situation, not pure talent based. But I think he could contribute on special teams. Now I like what he will bring down the road as a really cheap option early on, and could contribute. Only 21 years old, so really young. Next we have Mike Morgan. He's the guy I was struggling to figure out. I originally had him on the roster, then I took him off. I don't know if he's going to turn out to be too much, but just a backup player. He can rush the passer a little bit. Apparently he can play all three linebacker positions, which is, a good deal for him, but nothing too crazy, just a backup player. Next, O'Brien Schofield. The Cardinals cut him, and then the Seahawks signed him and gave him pretty much the same deal, but by performance based and everything. So I'm excited to see what he does, especially early on. While maybe Cliff Averill will be out, maybe Chris Clemens will be out, Bruce Irvin's gonna be out, so it's gonna be up to him and probably Benson Mayowa to show something, and get some pressure on Cam Newton. And so that's going to be a big challenge because Cam Newton's super mobile, and he's going to be able to escape the pocket and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully he can do some good stuff there. I like what he offers, and I think probably later on in the season he'll take a back seat, but it'll be a nice rotation sort of system where he'll be able to come in and get full energy and go attack the quarterbacks. It'll be fun to watch. Malcolm Smith. I liked him more than Leroy Hill last year, but I like him less than Alan Bradford or John Lotulelei. I just don't. Does a good job, but I just don't see him lasting for too much longer because the Seahawks, have such a high expectation and standard for players. Bobby Wagner, really, really good player. One of the, the best linebacker on the team for sure. Big hitter, was good last year, but looks bigger, better this year, faster. Really like what he does, and I'm excited to watch him play. KJ Wright, good player. Nothing, fifth round pick. He's just one of those solid players, kind of like a Cam Chancellor, although I like Cam Chancellor more. Does his job, but doesn't, isn't going to make, or going to be like a Pro Bowl player necessarily. But I don't know, actually, he's been a guy that you kind of almost forget about him a little bit. I don't know, at least I have. But I really like what he does, and, good player. Stephen Hauschka, really, really high on Stephen Hauschka right now. Last year I wasn't a huge fan because they weren't like kicking, 53-yard field goals. And my standard is you got to be able to make a 53-yard field goal, and if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be on the team, and they need to find a better kicker. But the weird thing with kickers is like they can struggle, and then all of a sudden they'll find it. At like weird ages. Like Hauschka's been in the league for 6 years, and this looks like it could be his best year when he looks really good. Because in the preseason in the Raiders game, he was on fire, and he was good last year from like less than 50 yards, which you'd kind of expect, but he's really good from less than 50 yards, so doing his job there. But then over 50 yards, he was just nothing and could not do anything. But then in the Chargers game, he hit a 60-yard field goal off the bottom of the goalpost, just missed it. And then he nailed a 56-yarder and a couple more from 50 yards in the Raiders game. So that's really all I need to see from the kicker, and I'm happy with what he does, and really pleased with him now that I know he can do that sort of stuff. And if they're not putting him out there, then that is Pete Carroll's fault, and I can get mad at him rather than Stephen Hauschka, because he's done a good job. And Stephen Hauschka is one of those guys that has a really long last name, but Hauschka, doesn't seem that long until you really look at it. I don't know, it's kind of a weird deal. Now we move into the guards. Paul McQuiston is a guard / tackle. They'll have him listed as another solid player like Bruno Giacomini. I like McQuiston more because Giacomini can rack up penalties and it seems like kind of a pinhead. But I don't know, one of those guys that I'd like to see taken over. I think James Carpenter will take him over shortly because he's just much more talented. Lemuel Jean-Pierre, just kind of a backup player. They see something in him, but I don't think there's anything too exciting. I don't think he's going to be like a starter down the road or anything. Just a backup guy. James Carpenter, like I mentioned before, really like what he does. Had some injuries, but was a first-round draft pick, and I hope he can take over for McQuiston, and make the offensive line really, really good. And then J.R. Sweezy beat out John Moffitt for the starting job. 7th-round guy last year. Had some struggles, but he seems to be working it all out, and hopefully he's able to play nicely. Then we get into the free safeties. We find Chris Maragos, a guy I was wondering whether he was going to make the team because he is I don't know, it doesn't have too much upside, but just kind of does a good job, and he beat out Winston Guy and Deshaun Shedd. But like what he does a good job. And then the guy that he is backing up for is Earl Thomas, one of the best players on the team. Looking at the numbers here, that Earl Thomas is 5'10", 202, and then Chris Maragos is 5'10", 200. But just like the talent levels are totally, just astronomically apart. And they both have 4 years of experience, but Chris Maragos is 26 and Earl Thomas is 24. Really, really like watching Earl Thomas play. Fits perfectly with the, Seahawks secondary, the Legion of Boom. Then we have Spencer Ware, like I mentioned before, as the fullback. Only 21 years old, super young guy. Had some moves. Curious to see what they want to do with him because they drafted him as a fullback, then played him as a running back mainly, and so we'll see how that all works out. In the Carolina game should give us a good idea of that. And which guys they decide to make inactive will be another interesting thing. A lot of that depends on if you can play special teams or not, which I think Spencer Ware was actually pretty good on, and along with Derek Coleman, one of the reasons they were both able to make the team, I think, and a guy like Chris Harper wasn't because didn't do too much on special teams. Next we move into the defensive tackles. They only have 4 listed here, but some of these, the whole Seahawks defense is kind of like a hybrid sort of thing, I think. And starting off, we have Jordan Hill, got a Penn State, 3rd-round draft pick. He had like a strained or torn something in his shoulder, but seems to be good to go. He might not play in the Carolina game, but should be back shortly. Shouldn't be a huge deal. Does a good job. Tony McDaniel I really like. He has 8 years of experience. Holy cow, I didn't realize it was that much. 28 years old, which I knew, but I thought he would, the numbers are kind of weird here. Like, if we find Steven Williams has 3 years of experience, but is 27, and then Tony McDaniel has 8 years of experience, but is 28. Just like the disparity there is kind of crazy, and how crazy or how that can get out of hand so quickly. I don't know if it's really out of hand, but the differences there. He had a really good game against the Packers, or maybe it was, I don't know if it was the Packers, might have been the Broncos. I don't know, he's had a couple of good games. Like what he does, offers some nice depth there. Brandon Meebane does a really good job. Hopefully he can get back to his really solid self. Does a good job stuffing the run. And then D'Anthony Smith, I don't know if it's D'Anthony or D'Anthony. I would assume D'Anthony. D'Anthony Smith is a guy at Louisiana Tech. 4 years of experience. The Seahawks traded a conditional pick to Jacksonville for him. And I guess they liked him more than Jay Howard and some of the other guys they cut. So I don't know. That's kind of surprising. I have no idea what he looks like or how he's going to play. But we'll see how that goes because he is one of 4 defensive tackles apparently. Then we move into the defensive ends, which we have Cliff Averill. Still don't know how to say it. He hasn't played in the preseason, so I haven't really learned. I guess. I have heard it, but I don't know. Like a lot of times people say it, but it's like what you really want is the players to say it, because I could be going either way, Although does it really matter? I don't know. So Cliff, the Seahawks signed him was, some people had him as the number 1 free agent, which I thought was kind of surprising. But he has had some sort of injury, so hopefully he'll be back shortly. I think he might be back for the first game. I don't know. Sometimes they'll when they have an idea of when they'll be back, they kind of try to hide it for some advantages, down the road. But really excited to watch him play. Makes the defensive line much better. And then we have Michael Bennett, another guy who makes the defensive line much better. Signed out of Tampa Bay. Was an undrafted guy with the Seahawks a couple years ago. Does a really good job. He can also play defensive tackle, so he provides some depth there. So that should be good stuff too. All the defensive ends I think are just really good players actually. Like there's no just backups, like meh players. I'm trying to think, the meh players like are Lemuel Jean-Pierre. I guess offensive line in general is kind of more of a meh position. Heath Farwell's a meh. And then D'Anthony Thomas is kind of a meh. But everyone else, I think that might be a good way to judge rosters is behind how much just meh is on the team. Although it's kind of tough. Like I'm sure a lot of people don't know who D'Anthony Smith is, even though that's someone I don't know. But a better example, Jeremy Lane or something like that. And if I were to look on another team's roster, I probably wouldn't recognize a lot of the players. This is the first year I've really I'd known all the 90 players on the Seahawks, 90-man roster, which is something kind of weird. I don't know. So now we have, moving on to still on the defensive ends, we have Chris Clemens. He tore his ACL in the Washington game, and everyone's like, oh, RG3, but Chris Clemens, had as good of a season. Has been better as a player over, his 10 years than RG3, which people are gonna be like, what? That's crazy. But it's like, dude, RG3 has had 1 year where he was really good, but who knows? It wouldn't surprise me if he were to blow out his knee again this next season. He might be done for his career. So right now, Chris Clemens is a better player and should have got more attention for his injury. And he's apparently looked really good. I don't know if he'll play the first game. I'd be really surprised if he does. But he should be playing, within, week 3 at the latest, I would imagine, because they decided to put him on the 53-man roster rather than the physically unable to perform list. And, I'm guessing he'll be ready to go and be ready to go full force when he gets back, which shouldn't be too long. And then Benson Mayowa, undrafted guy, they found him at the regional combine out of Idaho, was not good at all last year, had 3 sacks, and then 2 of them were against LSU. So I guess he's a guy that plays better against better competition. I don't know what was going on there. They must have done. Obviously Idaho totally mismanaged him because he was able to make a NFL roster, and he only had 3 sacks against the teams Idaho was playing, which was just nothing. But I really liked watching him play. Really good backup pool. He'll probably take a lesser role, I'd imagine, later on, and maybe he's a guy that could get cut when Bruce Irvin comes out. Depending on how he plays, but was too good in the preseason to let go. Now we have Brandon Browner as we move into the cornerbacks. Weird to think he only has 3 years of experience because his first year was, that was his first year as a full player in the NFL when the Seahawks got him. But he's been playing more than that with in the CFL and all that. Really like watching him play. I've actually grown my appreciation for him a lot. First I was definitely the weaker guy, compared to Richard Sherman, and still is. But when he just clubs the ball out of players, he's really picked up his forcing the ball, trying to force fumbles, technique, refined that, and that's been a lot of fun to watch. So, just 6'4", huge, really, really, really fun to watch, and the whole secondary is amazing. And then Jeremy Lane, the fifth corner on the team, on Northwestern State, had a good showing last year when Brandon Browner was, I think Thurmond was hurt, and then Brandon Browner was suspended. Did decent. I don't know if he's ever going to be a starter on the team. Could be if injuries force it, but a guy like Byron Maxwell looks a little better. Who's in the same sort of situation as a backup, and we'll see how these guys pan out. It could be by the time they come to starters, their deals are going to be up, and other teams pick them up because of how strong the depth is in the Seahawks secondary. Then Richard Sherman, obviously all pro, great player. I've said before I wasn't as high on him as I was before, but still it doesn't really get much better than him. I think the Seahawks secondary is, it's not just him and then a bunch of random guys. It's him and a bunch of guys that, could, I think Thurmond, Browner, and Sherman could all be Pro Bowlers this year. I guess we're just kind of crazy. I don't know, maybe not Thurmond, but Thurmond is definitely capable for it. And with Winfield out, that's the other guy I missed on my cuts. Winfield got cut, which is surprising. And then he was retired. So it was kind of like this weird blend of like cut/retired, but I think he was definitely cut, and then he decided, let's just turn this into a retirement so it doesn't look too bad, sort of thing. I'll take my $1 million guaranteed or whatever I got from this deal and have a happy life after 15 years in the NFL sort of thing. And that's the way the Seahawks kind of played it off too, even though I'm pretty sure he did get cut and got his deal. Because if he were to retire, the Seahawks would get their money back for, their guaranteed signing bonus and all that sort of stuff. But Walter Thurmond was better anyway. And I'd rather, if he was holding back Walter Thurmond, he should have gone. And then last but not least is Max Unger, the Pro Bowl center. Does a really good job, really good blocker, and, is one of the most probably underrated guy out of the Seahawks offensive line. Not talked about too much, but just does his job and is, really, really good. Doesn't get much better than that. So now we will move on to the practice squad players. All right, so now moving on to the practice squad, we have, starting off the wide receiver again, is Brian Walters. I guess one quick note, as I mentioned before, the Seahawks did sign Chris Harper to the practice squad, and then the 49ers signed him off the Seahawks practice squad. It's kind of a weird change of events there. But then through that, I think the Seahawks would have had Brian Walters off the practice squad, and then they put him on. But he's, a very good player. He's got some experience, and if a guy were to get hurt, he could come in and do a good job. Didn't really have a big opportunity this preseason because he had some injuries, but I don't know. I think he will do a really good job if he needs to, and I really like that signing. And then you have Cooper Helfet as kind of your backup, third tight end. I guess at this point, kind of a weird situation. I thought he was decent. Has been really developing and turning into a more decent player. I don't know. I'm not as confident as if he comes in more of a developmental guy. And going on the developmental guy or line is another guy, and not Winston guy, because he was signed by the Jaguars or picked up or claimed or whatever. Is Ty Powell. Really like what he is able to do, and I'm excited to watch him. I guess I won't really watch him, but I think next year he could be a bigger force, and maybe even the year after that is when he will kind of finally shine. I don't know, he could do some interesting things, and is a really good practice squad candidate. And the Seahawks have said before they want to have the best practice squad in the NFL, and that's what they're looking at right here. And then we have Ryan Seymour, a guy at Vanderbilt. I don't know, and then Jared Smith. I don't know. I don't really know the difference between these two guys. They're both 6'4". One's 301 pounds and the other's 302 pounds. 23 years old and rookies, out of East Carolina, New Hampshire, both kind of smaller schools. So I mean, I think one was a defensive lineman, and then I don't know. I really don't know. These are two guys that I didn't really care to learn too much about because they weren't impressing that much, and obviously not enough for me to tell them apart. But just all players. I'm not as confident if offensive linemen were to go down, but the Seahawks already are carrying 10 offensive linemen. So if one were to go down, they just fill in as a backup, so not too worried about that. Well, Cooper Helfet will probably get called up if one of the tight ends goes down, because you can't have one tight end on the team really. And then Michael Brooks as your defensive tackle, out of East Carolina, rookie. Had some flash in the preseason a bit. Obviously not worthy of making the team, but a really nice practice squad candidate that could grow and could turn into something. And then Silver Salinga is the guy that I had on the team that was able to slip through waivers that the Seahawks, traded for in the, as I mentioned before, start going through the cuts, but they traded him, or they traded John Moffitt for him, sort of deal. And then Deshaun Shedd, I'm really happy about. Portland State guy, has 2 years of experience, kind of a cornerback safety hybrid sort of player, and he, I think next year or later in this season could turn into a solid contributor for the team, and like what he offers. So that's the Seahawks practice squad. Looks pretty good. Going to be ever evolving, because Seahawks are so good that players could be signed off that and sort of deal. And then the reserve / physically unable to perform list, we have Percy Harvin. Obviously, when he comes back, that'll be huge and a lot of fun to watch. And then Greg Scruggs could be a good option down the road if they need more defensive tackle help. I'm sure by the time he's ready to, or by the time he's able to come back, he could if they need to. I don't think some of these injuries aren't that big of a deal. Like Thorold Simon, cornerback, had kind of an issue, but I think if there wasn't a space for him, they would add him on. But because he had that injury, they just decided to, pup him there. And then Corey Toomer, been a guy they've been trying to get for a while, get going, never really worked out. I don't, maybe he'll take this whole year off. I really don't know how that'll work out. And then you have Bruce Irvin, which will be back by the 5th game. So that's the Seahawks 53-man roster / practice squad sort of deal. I don't know. It looks pretty good to me. I like what they have here. And we'll see how this evolves. Maybe it'd be cool to do something at the end of the season, comparing to where they've gone and where they came from. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time.